By PC, pod or pad, you're listening to Paid to Play, and possibly watching it too. I'm Rob Farker, your host for this exploration of the dangerous idea that bringing your whole self, especially the bits that you worry make you seem weird, geeky or odd, into your income-generating life is the best thing you can do. It might not be easy, but it is easier than we think and even fear, and I'd like to show you how. This is an even-numbered episode, one of my off-week episodes. So in these episodes, I talk about my own efforts to find the value to others in the things I love doing, and the struggle to muster the courage to ask others to pay me to do those things. I usually do 3 segments in these episodes: Money Where My Mouth Is, Musings and Mailbag. I've not had any new items in the mailbag again this week, so it will just be Money Where My Mouth Is and Musings today. So let's start things off. How have things been going for me Paid to Play wise over the last couple of weeks? Well, it's been kind of interesting. I think I mentioned in the off-week episode before this one that I had my first full payment of $22 per month of my fully funded Patreon project. So I had enough sponsors to actually hit my target of having all of my hosting bills paid. Unfortunately, in the meantime, the relationship between myself and one of my Patreon patrons came to an end. So that means that I have the Patreon project has dropped below its first and currently only funding goal. I am still getting $3 per episode from my 2 earliest sponsors who have stuck with me since I started the Patreon project, and thank you very much to you two once again. But it means that in order to hit my basic funding goal, I am looking for a few more sponsors. I keep trying not to use the word sponsors because one of the things that came out of me losing that $5 per episode patron is that it's not really a sponsorship. You'll see on the FAQ page for the Paid to Play podcast, you can find it at www.paidtoplay.com.au/FAQ, that I am not looking for an advertising deal out of Patreon. If you are a backer on Patreon, you are doing it because you like the show, you like the content I produce, and you'd like to help me make more of it. That's the only part of the deal. And kind of the reason why I lost that sponsorship is because it did wind up becoming a little bit more like, like I said, like a sponsorship rather than a patronage. In order to hit that $11 a month goal, I am looking for another, some folks to back me for enough to hit $5 extra per episode that I'm getting at the moment. And one thing I have done in the meantime is I've taken down that $5 per episode funding level. I suddenly realized that I wasn't particularly enjoying the process of getting the content out early for my backers. I am sorry, folks, but heck, I only had the one early episode backer anyway, so from the looks of things, getting content early wasn't much of a big deal for folks, and it's certainly not been enough of a sell to get more than one extra person on board. So if you folks are happy to back me at the $1 or even the $3 per episode level, that is fantastic. I will still make sure I announce your backing and put you up on the thank you backers page on the Pay to Play website, and keep the Patreon page updated as best I can. But in the meantime, Fiverr has picked up. A couple of weeks ago, I got a request for some voice work, which I did, and not only did I get the $5 for the workload itself, I also got a $5 tip, so thank you very much to that wonderful person who purchased my services, and right at the moment I do have another Fiverr gig going. I was actually thinking of doing some recording for that this morning, but as you might be able to hear right at the moment, it is just before 6 o'clock in the morning as I record this, and the birds are awake. So they're twittering away in the background, and that kind of gets in the way of producing quality audio. I was thinking of getting set up in the spare room, but it takes a lot more fiddling right now than I have the brain power for. There you go, there's an example. Brain power for at 6 a.m. I think I might have to make sure I either stay up till midnight tonight to do the recording, or I go to bed early and set my alarm to get up, spend a few minutes doing the recording in the spare room, and then shut down and go to bed and go to work tomorrow morning. So yes, that's some of the struggles of recording at home, folks, is audio quality production. And given that studio rental is at least 100 Australian dollars per hour, there's no way I'm going to be able to afford that at my current level of voice talent work. So that is kind of how things have been in the past week, past couple of weeks, paid to play wise. So let's move on to musings. I'm only about 7 minutes in, so this might actually be a shorter episode for once. Where am I at? I think I've talked about, I pretty much said all I need and want to say about what I've learned from my Patreon experience. I want to kind of revisit a topic I discussed a couple of weeks ago, maybe about a month ago now, about starting with what you're already doing. Because recently I chatted with a fellow who's kind of in my general area with this podcast. His name is John Williams, and he himself has a book and a website called Screw Work Let's Play. You will be able to hear more from him when my episode goes live, which will be in a couple of months' time. I think I've got a few people in the meantime who I've recorded episodes with and I need to get out first. And one of the things that he does for people is that he hosts 30-day challenges. It's a paid membership thing, and it kind of sets up a private group where all of the members get into, and during the 30-day challenge, people choose a thing that they enjoy doing and sort of do a project around it, with the end goal that by the end of the 30 days, you've taken the thing you love and you've developed a product around it and you're marketing it for sale. And I kind of like that idea. One of the things that John discussed during the chat is his ethos of, if you are trying to work out what you love doing, because one of those struggles with getting paid to play, it's something that I've asked a lot of my guests about recently, is this idea that because when we are not getting paid to play, and we're kind of looking at the idea from the outside, we get this idea that when we do get paid to play, everything once we're doing it is sunshine and roses, and the work life, it's, you know, that idea that gets bandied about of not having to, if you do something you love, you're not having to work a day in your life ever again, which is a lovely idea. But there is the thing that I've discussed with guests over and over again, that there are still some work elements involved in doing the thing you love. There's administration, there's marketing, and while the fact that it's all based around doing something that you love doing, it informs all of that other stuff a bit more. It makes it all make a bit more sense, and it's less of a hassle, less of a chore to do it. There are still those elements sometimes of it being a bit of a hassle, it being a bit of a chore, and I think that's something that people don't really think about when they consider getting paid to play. As I said, they believe that once they're doing it, it's a joyous experience from sitting down at your desk to start your work day, to getting up from it once the work day is over, and that is not necessarily true. I do like to chat with my guests about what they're making the things that they love making is actually like, and the other things that they have to do to make sure that they are getting out there and advertising the results of their joyous making. It takes that, it takes getting paid to play off of that pedestal a bit, and I guess it's kind of like love. You think that once you fall in love with that perfect person, everything's going to be great. And, it's not necessarily like that. It's fantastic being in love, but you've got to realise that there are times neither of you is perfect. You're going to have your down periods, but it's just about, in those times, it's about realising that love is a decision and a commitment to stick by that decision, to keep putting the other person equal first with yourself, no matter how hard it gets. To get back to the topic, there's this idea of taking a thing that you love doing and trying it out for 30 days, committing to that making, getting involved in that other perhaps 70 or 80% that's required in order to turn your joyous making into a product, and actually doing the scary thing of putting it out there in front of other people and saying, hey folks, this is this thing that I love doing, here's how it's going to help you in your lives, please give me some money for it. And putting that time frame around it kind of gives you that comfort that when maybe things do get a little bit rough and you're not sure why you're doing it, that you can just keep pressing on for a while with the knowledge that it's not forever, and once the 30 days is up, you can sit back, evaluate what you've done and how you've spent those 30 days, and whether it is something that you really want to continue with. And if not, then you can set it aside as a thing that you've done and congratulate yourself for doing it, and congratulate yourself from having learned from the experience, and then you can pick something else and go on with that. Which is perhaps something that we don't think about when we try getting paid to play. We think about committing to it and not really, because we can't see an end point for it, we wind up making ourselves a bit miserable. So I do like this idea, but right at the moment I definitely don't have the cash to get involved in one of John's 30-day challenges, and I'm not sure when his next one is anyway. If that is something that interests you, please go check out his website, www.screwworkletsplay.com. That's all one word, Screw Work Let's Play. Maybe get your hands on the book as well and give it a read through. But I do want to try something for a period of time and see whether it sticks. And rather than 30 days, I'm going to give myself 60, because I don't really at the moment have that support network that folks on John's 30-day challenge have, of everyone else who's bought into the project and is giving it a go. Also, let's face it, I do have a few other irons in the fire at the moment. I have 5 going. I've got this podcast, and I do want to talk a little bit more about that afterwards. Yes, I've got a few other things that I kind of need to be pressing onward with, so I think I need that 60-day wiggle room. But the trick was figuring out what I wanted to try. I thought about picking up and finishing off 3 things, which is an idea I had of compiling all of the advice that I get from my guests. You'll know, as a listener to the podcast, that at the end of every show, I ask people what 3 things do they wish that someone had told them when they were getting started in getting paid to play, that would have helped them out immensely, that they sort of learned by themselves along the way, and that they could pass on to someone who is in the situation that they were in right at the start, that might help them out a bit. And one idea that I had was to compile those three things and maybe turn it into an ebook. And it seemed like a good idea at the time. And then I noticed, as I started getting toward the recording time for this project, I would think a little bit about maybe getting to work on it. And I thought, no, let's wait until I announce it first. Let's just hold off until then. And then a couple of days ago, I realized something. You will probably seen on the internet there is a phrase that's been that's been quoted in Facebook updates and in tweets, and especially on Facebook, you'll find it as one of those fun little motivational graphics that people love to put up. I can't remember the exact phrasing, but it's along the lines of, if you love doing something, you'll be doing it anyway. If you love doing something, you'll find the time. And if you don't love doing something, you'll find an excuse. And I realized I was finding excuses. And I thought, all right, okay, I am not going to force myself to do this, because that's counter to the whole point of getting paid to play. If it's not playful at the beginning, if it's not something that excites me enough to be spending time doing it anyway, no, bugger it. I'm not going to, I think what I talked about in the last even-numbered episode, I'm not going to should myself into doing something that I'm not really that enthusiastic about in the first place. So I thought, all right, fine, let's set three things aside. But what will I do instead? There's nothing really fiction-y that's begging me to write it or even draw it, if you look at my endeavour in making webcomics. That petered out just because, well, I sort of lost interest. My idea ran dry, and I was not interested in forcing myself to try and do something every week if I wasn't giving a stuff. So I guess I asked the question, a couple of episodes ago, I started talking about that idea of start with what you're already doing. And I kind of waffled about it. And I thought, well, what am I already doing? What am I sort of spending my time fiddling with when I'm, without having to discipline myself into doing it, what am I noodling with at the back of my head, sort of revisiting on a regular basis and just toying with and playing with and knocking into shape? So here is the weird or odd idea that I would otherwise maybe be a little bit afraid to do anything with. If you've been keeping an eye on me on Facebook and Twitter recently, I've been playing a new computer game called Heroes of the Storm. And while I've been playing it, because it's an online game and it's a multiplayer game, so it's something that a lot of people are going to get involved with, but it's something that you can potentially be playing with friends, and it's pretty much designed to, you kind of have to play it with other people. You have the option not to. You can set up a custom game or go online in a versus AI mode and play with digital teammates, or computer-controlled teammates, more accurately, against computer-controlled enemies. But there is that idea, it's kind of like an indoor soccer league, or, your weekend sports league, or your bowling thing. There is that temptation to get a little bit better, so that you're not letting the side down. And there's also that idea of people who are maybe watching over a friend or loved one's shoulder, who are maybe not curious enough to play themselves, but are curious enough about it to, want to be able to talk and hold a meaningful conversation with your friend or loved one about what he or she is doing. And I, because I have sort of been bitten by this bug, I've kind of wanted to get a little bit better with playing. And I search online, of course, and games like Heroes of the Storm, of course, they create groups of enthusiasts who will go online and they will talk about getting better at the game and tactics and individual abilities of characters and when best to deploy them. And it's part of a genre that is fairly recent but has been going on for a few years now, called the Multiplayer Online Battle Arena, or MOBA. You might have heard of similar games like Defense of the Ancients or the big kahuna, which is League of Legends. And they've developed their own jargon, of course, in the meantime. And people who go into it are probably going to be immediately bamboozled by terms like laning and tanks and squishies and glass cannons and jungling and team fights and ganking. And you're going to be wondering, yeah, you're going to get a little bit lost. So I found myself, while I've been playing these games, thinking about putting something together and thinking about, okay, this thing that I'm doing, how would I explain it to somebody? This term that I'm reading online, how can I write a definition of it for someone who is reading it and just going, what? And, you know, sometimes when you ask people to say, hey, you know, what are you talking about? What does that mean? They get a little bit like, oh, you know, stuff you go find an FAQ. I'm not going to waste my time explaining it to you. It's sadly enough, you know, you do get people who just who come along, even if they're not perhaps ultra competitive. They're there to play, and they're there to talk about the joy they're playing with friends. And while they're, you know, they don't mind sharing the joy with fellow enthusiasts, but they don't have the patience to foster other people's enthusiasm when they've got questions. And sadly, you know, it is a pastime, and the time that we get to spend with the things that we love is limited. So, you know, I can sometimes understand that viewpoint. But yeah, I like fiddling with the idea of writing something that's going to help people, that's going to answer those questions and say, you know, what do these terms mean? And so that's going to be my thing. It is the morning of Sunday, August the 23rd, so 60 days, or let's make it 2 months, and say by October the 23rd, I want to have something. I don't know how big or small it is going to be, but I've been noodling with it for the past few days anyway. I've set up a Scrivener file, I've written a couple of articles and made some notes for things that I want to talk about. So let's see if in 60 days' time I can't get something together that, yeah, maybe it's an ebook, maybe it's a website resource, but yet some sort of a product that people can download and hopefully pay for. There's some questions to be answered there, like rights questions. Can I sell sort of, you know, a guide to League of Legends, pardon me, Heroes of the Storm, as long as I just sort of use it as an unofficial thing, and making notes that any mention of trademarks like Heroes of the Storm or character names or map names, see if I can find out whether I can use them under fair use and still charge people for the work. And yeah, we'll see how we go. And if at the end of the day, at least once the 60 days are up, I can see where I am with that and figure out what I want to do next, or whether it's something that I can work on and develop further. Anyway, we're coming up to the 25-minute mark, so once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening and watching. Of course, as I usually end every episode, I would like you folks to help me out with this podcast. Please rate it and review it, and if you like this episode, like it, +1 it, star it, and share it out to your friends and the folks who you think would enjoy it. Give it a rating and a review on iTunes or your favourite podcast aggregator. Share it out on your favourite social media channel, the Paid to Play podcast page. You can find it on Facebook and on Google+. You can, of course, follow me on by Rob F, and I tweet every episode as it goes up there. Favourite and retweet this episode and any others that you like. Like and share the episodes. And again, as I said at the beginning of the episode, please consider backing me on YouTube. I need 5 people to back me at the $1 per episode level to hit my funding goal, which is $11 US an episode. Once I get that, my funding, paid to play, its basic expenses will be covered. So that is hosting and domain name fees. And I would love it if you folks could help me get back to that level again. Next week's episode, folks, I'm going to be a little bit cheeky. I know I usually run these on a Sunday morning. But I'm actually going to see if I can get this next episode set up to go on Friday, because this coming weekend, Saturday and Sunday, Sugar City Con is on in Mackay, in Queensland, in North Queensland. It's about 8 hours south of where I live, so I will sadly not be attending, but my guest for the next episode, cosplayer Evie Dantes, aka Dante's Inferno, will be there. So I would actually like to get this episode out a little bit early to help promote her and help promote the con. It was a great little chat with Evie. It was kind of done at the last minute when another chat I had fell through, and I asked her for a huge favour whether she could come on and record pretty much right there and then, and she said yes. She even reinstalled Skype and got set back up on there so that we could chat, and it was a great little half an hour where I asked her about her hobby of cosplay and how she gets paid to play. She has a couple of sponsorship deals, and of course recently she has become a touring cosplay judge. I met her as well as my previous guest Vicky Vic at Tropicon, and we had a great time there, and it was fantastic to get her on the show. So please come back on Friday or Thursday evening US time for that episode. And if you are in the vicinity of Mackay next weekend, please drop in, tell Evie I say hello, and have a bloody good time down there. It is year 2 of Sugar City Con. And I think it's the first time that they're doing a full weekend convention. So get down there and support them as much as you can, or get up there as the case may be if you happen to live south of Mackay, and have a great time. And in the meantime, I am Rob Farker, asking you to stand by your play. You never know who out there is going to love it.